Welcome everyone to the monthly or regular supporter hangout for patrons and YouTube supporters, joiners, members, channel members. That's what they're calling them. So yeah, welcome. This is the thing where you can ask me questions and I answer them. As always, I do have the Patreon thread open right here. And I'm also really quickly going to open up the thread from, let's see if I can find it, from the YouTube channel. And that's basically what the community tab does on YouTube. Either it's, I don't know what they're doing with it. It's like some weird social network kind of thing where I can post stuff and then you guys see it, but it looks like it's a video, but it's not. It's like, it's kind of weird. But one of the good things you can use it for is for the membership features, which is kind of like Twitch subscriptions, I guess. So yeah, let me check. No comments on that. But if you're coming in from YouTube, say hi. Hi, everyone. Yeah, so ask questions in chat until we amass some in there. I'm going to go through the question on Patreon because that's, I should just keep this over here, because that is just always a good source of interesting stuff that I can answer. So before we do that, there we go. On the R is backwards. Quick teaser. Have you guys seen on Twitter the castings that I've done? This is kind of stage 2 of that. So I've cast like a little tea light holder thing in plaster, and this is step 2. So that's a flexible shell. Let me see, I guess there we can see it a bit better. Wow, auto exposure is fantastic. Flexible shell that should demold pretty easily, and then there's a rigid PLA insert. So the idea is this gets cast over plaster or concrete or whatever. Then you flip it around and this is exposed. You can pull out the PLA. Wow, dear camera, holy moly. Let's try that. You flip it over, so then this part is filled with plaster or concrete, and then you pull the PLA out, and then this just peels away from the plaster and leaves a nice surface. We'll see how well that goes. That's something that can go live probably sometime next week. I still have to cast this larger one. And also, this backside here, this is going to get plugs like this. So these I've printed not too nicely, but this is going to get plugs like that, so I'm going to have LED sticking through here. If that doesn't make a lot of sense, well, just watch the video once that comes up. But that's been a really fun project. Cool. Questions. Let's jump right into it. Spike, a regular asker viewer, is asking, hey, love the live stream Q&As and all you do. Thank you. I have a Canova heat bed on the way, so 240 volt, 1000 watts. That's I don't know how large that is, but that sounds really nice. Complete with an SSR to go on my CR10 S400, so that would be 400 by 400 millimeters. I should install the SSR inside the control box, bolt it onto the power supply, and run the 240 feed and thermistor wires out via the aviation plug that the original comes with. I don't have the CR10 in here. Or do it outside and in its own enclosure. So first part of that question right there. I probably wouldn't want to jam more stuff into the CR10 control box. The CR10 is one of those printers that has like the separate power supply and electronics box. And the fact that there is low voltage componentry in there, like the main board and all your wiring and stuff, I wouldn't want to have more high voltage stuff, so AC 240 volt stuff in there than necessary. So probably keep it outside. And also the aviation plugs, like those are the, I don't know, they look kind of like XLR. Are they larger DIN connectors? I don't know what they're called, but the larger ones that look like XLR and then have the screw sleeve over them, I wouldn't necessarily trust those for 230 volts, especially not if they're on the same plug as a thermistor connector. I don't know, just doesn't feel right. They might be rated for that, but I would do a separate enclosure. Just slap it on top of your control box. So also, will the SSR require heat sinking? If so, will it be enough to bolt it to the 2040 frame of the CR10? So that's the open builds. Is it open builds? Yeah, open builds wheels or open build style frame. of the CR10. So yeah, that should be enough. The SSR, yeah, even okay. The SSR, used to use them as mic plugs. Yeah, the SSR is kind of yeah, it does generate some heat with 1,000 watts, so that would be around 4 amps. The thing is, an SSR has a fixed voltage drop, so I think that's in the volts range somewhere. So I have a 600 watt bed on this one, and it's been fine with, well, I guess I do have it on an aluminum plate. I would just bolt it to the frame and keep an eye on it. It should be fine. It shouldn't generate that much heat. But in case of doubt, look up how much of a drop you get on your specific SSR, multiply that by the current, and there's your waste power, and kind of, 5 watts or something should be fine without anything. And then like 20 watts or so, just bolt it to the frame and it should be fine. Plus, it's not going to be on all the time. That's a good thing. It's only going to be on full blast while it is heating up. So yeah, it's probably not that much of a deal, but just keep an eye on it and should be all right. Any other idea on what 4-pin plug to replace it with? Just do it internally or externally and wire everything to the SSR. What other 4-pin plug? Let me think. What is 240 volt rated? I don't know. You could always go for like your mains connectors, because that's essentially what it is. Like, just go, put one of these Euro connectors on your heat bed and just plug that into your SSR box and give it an outlet, because it's technically, right, it's just a switched outlet that you're doing. That's probably one of the easiest and most accessible types of connector, even if it is, kind of bulky if you have this thing just as an additional plug. But if you want it detachable, that might be a really simple way to go about it. Cool. Hope that answered the question, Spike. Thanks for asking that. That was pretty good. Right. Andrew is asking for some materials, PTG and TPU. He runs the nozzle slightly further from the bed. That makes sense, because those like to stick pretty well, to prevent excessive adhesion. Yes, clogging or escaping flex filament. So that's when the filament actually escapes from your extruder and starts curling up and doing weird stuff. So there you go. I do this manually with the live Z adjust on the Mark III. Could this be done in G-code with Slick 3R? Yeah. Don't see an existing option for it. Yes, it can be done. And that's Spike also. Sorry about those pop-ups. I've not figured out how to turn those off. Can be done with Slicer. Chained with filament settings. Yes. So the thing is, Slick 3R has that kind of... it sounds better on paper than it is in practice feature, where you have a separate profile for the machine, for the filament, and for print settings. Typically, though, those are not completely separate. Like, you're not going to be able to, let's see, use the same print settings and the same filament settings for a different machine. What I usually end up with, especially for flexibles, because so many rules don't apply if you're printing flexibles, is one profile that is kind of your PLA, ABS, PTG profile for the machine, and I guess print settings as well, and then a whole different set of settings for flexibles. So usually that is slower, and a thicker extrusion width for flexibles kind of does work pretty well. And you can also add that in there. Let me see if I can pull it up real quick. Not Slick 2R, Slick 3R. So yeah, the setting that you're looking for is, if I could find my mouse between all these screens. So that's the Delta Pro settings. So Z offset, it's right there. So Z offset, that basically shifts your entire print up or down. So it doesn't care about first layer height. It just moves basically the entire G-code up and down. So the limitation to that is, though, because your printer is typically not going to be able to go to a negative Z. So if you say nozzle is touching the bed is your 0 Z level, you cannot tell your printer to go below that. Typically, that's how most printers are set up. So if you drop in, a Z offset that is more negative than your first layer height, 0.3, then the printer would outright refuse to go any further down. So that's the only limitation. You can do that, but if you want to go further up, you can very much do that with that. And with printer settings, I mean, you probably want to go in extruder and kind of mess with retraction and that sort of stuff anyways if you're printing flexibles, because typically you're not going to use the same settings as for PLA. So that would be, where's my touch? There we go. That would be my answer to that. So Spike, thanks for answering that beforehand, but yeah, good stuff. Alexander, hi. Don't worry about being late. This video, this Hangout, as always, is being recorded, and it will be available at the same link as a recorded VOD, I guess you'd call it on Twitch. But yeah, you can also skip back. So that's one of the good things about that. Let's see. Jaap van Wingeren is asking or commenting, hey, thinking a while about your restarting reviews post now, where I basically asked you guys, what printer I should start with. He did vote, but nothing in particular that interested him. So, good point. Good point. Not everyone cares about everything I do. Granted. I'd love to see more builds from scratch. Love the cheap Prusa and the hang printer. What materials you'd use, where to get them, and why. Maybe a Voron design or something completely custom. So let me just pull that up because I've looked it up before. So the Voron is basically a Core XY. I was going to say Ultimaker, but it's basically a big box. It's basically a big box, mechanically configured. So yeah, scratch printer builds, yes, would like to do more of those as well. The thing is just printer builds or machine builds are an amazing amount of effort. If you just build one yourself, it's kind of okay, right? It's you order stuff, you build one here and there. But if I actually do a build for YouTube for the camera, everything needs to be right there before I start. I need to be sure that everything is going to work before I even, get the first screw out of the bag. There's a ton of preparation. The video side of things is difficult, but it's really interesting. I mean, building printers is a good sport, and yeah. Let me see. So the next thing I am going to be building is the MPCNC, and you can see the first parts for that here. Not necessarily a printer, but I guess it's a. You could put an extruder on there and use it as one. So that's going to be one of the next live builds, and it's going to be in the same style as the Dolly, as the Mark II-ish clone. So that's what I'm going to be doing next, and I'm just going to see how well it works and what comes of it, and then kind of move on and see, see where we go from there, what we need, whether we need more printers or more CNC machines, or we'll see. I kind of want like a really large printer that I can build at some point. What if I were invited to film someone else's builds? That requires probably even more coordination. I think you've mentioned that before. You have like a Delta build going on, right? Filming that is okay if you do it live, like if I do it like I did the Dolly build. Yes, it's not going to be an edited video. It's going to be a live series basically, plus a few beforehand. Might work. I got to think about that. It's filming someone else is always a lot harder than filming someone who kind of, and they know how the entire video process works. Then if you're just going somewhere and pointing a camera at something, that's going to require a ton of work in editing. I'll really have to think about that, how that can be pulled off. I guess it would be pretty similar to the hang printer build with Torbjorn. We'll see. But back to the question or comment from Yup. Yes, so more builds from scratch? Yes, they are just a ton of work. I kind of feel bad because I've accepted some of these printers that I've had in that poll for review. Like I don't know, did I literally accept the CR10 or did they just send it to me? Whatever. But there is a lot of interest from people, especially for something like the Ender 3, which seems to be like the printer to go for right now. And I think there is value in adding kind of my voice to the discussion about those printers. Yeah, just to kind of counteract that force of, you know, people who've not used 3D printer before, kind of doing it for affiliate sales or whatever. There's a lot of that out there. I feel like it's valuable to have my voice in there as well. Not that I know more than those, but maybe, I don't know. Well, reviews are because, you know, you're going to be using those machines, right? So reviews, getting the right machine from the start has value. If you know, even if you just look at it from that angle. Alexander is asking about filaments, and that could actually be a pretty large discussion topic with someone who's actually making filaments on a larger scale. So, I guess it's two spins on the same questions. So, since there are now a wide variety of filaments available, I was wondering the following. Are particles in filament influencing the production process of different materials a lot? So that is basically, how does a material behave while it is produced or manufactured into filament? And I would say if you put enough of it in, yes, a lot. That button. If not, why aren't filament producers offering same exotic colors across multiple materials, just supply and demand thing? Or put differently, why is there PLA vertical galaxy but no ABS vertical galaxy, or PTG, Tom's Infinity Blue? It's interesting that you bring up the... Excuse me. It's interesting that you bring up the Filamentum line of filaments and the Infinity Blue, because those are actually more similar than you might think. But there are a few things to it. So if you look at colorant, so just the base color, this is the burnt tangerine orange metallic. This is the protopasta filament that we made. So this is a colorant plus particles, so you get basically all of it. The colorant typically comes on it's you know, it's pellets, it's granules like your base resin, your base polymer, but it's typically made specifically for a certain range of materials. So you're most of the time not going to be able to use the same colorant for a PLA and a PTG and the ABS and so on. You're going to need a different base for those, unless of course you make your colorant yourself, etc., like we kind of did here. Did we? Not sure. We for sure added the particles in ourselves, but so that's the first one. You need different colorants for different polymers. So if we just say, okay, that's taken care of, you can't get the same colors for different base polymers, then there's the other question of particles. So it kind of differs. So the question was kind of like about particles and filaments. Particles like this gold flake, I'm not sure how well that is going to show up, but we can try. Well, we don't even have autofocus. Sweet. So this has some gold flakes in there, and that is literally just particles. Those don't do much for your colorant as in pigment, yes, but particles as in visible flakes. Those in that concentration don't do much, but the thing is, as soon as you add stuff like fibers, it dramatically changes the way a filament behaves, not just in you know, printing, but also in production. So that's a pretty wild streak there. It's just, you know, it takes extra effort to get the colorants in stock, etc., for all these different materials. And it's also supply and demand. Filamentum, I think, are still making ABS, but there's just so little of a market there. And it's also different market segments. If you're printing ABS, you probably don't care about something being like nice and shiny as much as if you're printing PLA that is actually going to look good. So yeah, there might just not be enough of a demand for that. Definitely possible, but it takes extra effort. Jonathan is asking, friend and I have been testing his design for an all-in-one effector and remote drive extruder. Working really well, but some of the printed gears and the mechanism tend to wear off quickly. As it's meant to become a Kickstarter and production-ready product, this needs to be addressed. But the cost of SLS nylon printing those gears is prohibitive, as it is so often, yes. And making the molds for injection parts even more so. Can you think of any other manufacturing method for prototyping that would yield more resistant parts? So, with gears, the question is, what material are you printing in? If you're starting with PLA and kind of running them at well, if it's an extruder, it's probably going to be more of a high torque situation than a high RPM situation. But the first thing I can suggest is use a nylon. Use something that is kind of more slippery and more abrasion resistant. Maybe even look into dual extrusion with the IGOS filaments, or completely printing out of the IGOS filaments, which are kind of self-lubricating. That's the point with those, that those kind of don't wear out. The other part to that equation is your gear actually sized correctly? Did you kind of do your basic gear calculation, and did you make sure that like the force on the teeth is low enough that it can be handled by a polymer? So if they wear out, what you can often do is just change the shape of the gear. Just make it larger, so you have more surface that can wear away, and you get less torque. Yeah, that's how it works, right? Larger gears, same RPM, means less torque. So use larger gears, use thicker gears. It might not be much. And also, of course, make sure your profiles are correct, but I'm assuming that is already taken care of. If you're using some sort of gear generator that is going to create, is involute gearing, is that the correct English word? Probably. That's going to generate good gears, but make sure your shapes are all good. And that is also going to be a good, well, a good way to making sure that they run well and smooth. Any other manufacturing method for prototyping that would yield more resistant parts? Well, I guess you could always CNC them, right? You could always, I don't know what scale you're talking about, whether those are like tiny gears or, this size gear. But yeah, CNC might be an option. CNC it out of Delrin or nylon or whatever. That could be an option. Or even just buying a gear off the shelf. That can, you can get so many different shapes and sizes and styles and variations online now. And actually some of the Chinese manufacturers might be able to kind of customize some for you. Worm gears, 2 centimeter diameter range. Oh, that's tough for 3D printing. So CNCing is kind of out of the equation with a worm gear. Yeah, check what you can buy off the shelf for sure. See if, again, one of the Chinese manufacturers or even sellers, like you ask a few people on AliExpress or in Alibaba preferably, hey, I need this thing, can you get it for me, and can you machine it to our specifications, or can you make it to our specifications? And you'd be surprised how much they will be able to make for you. It might not be super cheap, but that might be a way out. Right, yeah, tolerance for FDM work well, but it's hard to machine on a CNC, and it's that side is going to put a lot of pressure on the surface, and that's just going to grind away the material. So yeah, hope that helps. Let's check it out. Oh yeah, there was a question in chat from before we miss it. Andre, finally have my Prusa i3 Mark III with the powder-coated PEI build plate. Oh yeah, I do have a package from Prusa somewhere that I still need to open up. Where has that gone? Like, where did I put that? Huh. But yeah, there were some PEI bits in there. The question is, can I print P2G on PEI? What is the best separator? Windex, glue stick, Magic Glue. So Windex, I wouldn't really use as like a predictable kind of thing because it's more of a cleaner. Yes, it's going to leave a soapy residue on there, but I wouldn't trust it. Glue stick works really well. Glue stick bonds pretty well to a print and it keeps sticking to your PEI. Magic Glue, on the other hand, I do happen to have a few bottles here. This is the large one. Don't squeeze these, by the way, if you're not pressing down on the tip. Magic Glue, on the other hand, it might actually be in those instructions to not squeeze them. Magic Glue kind of releases from the PEI over time. So if you're printing something and you're okay with it basically releasing from the PEI and taking your Magic Glue with it, then this is a good option. This is easier to release than glue stick in many cases, but it also depends on the exact glue stick that you're using. So some glue sticks are kind of more like the tough, elastic, etc. Style, and some get crisper if you dry them. So yeah, glue stick and Magic Glue work. If you have glue stick at hand, try that first, see if that works for you. But it's definitely better than printing directly on the PEI, as it might just tear it up completely. They are pretty tough, but not unlimited tough. Right, Magic Glue to be the best. Yeah, Magic Glue is really good when it comes to releasing the part. So you have a large part like this. This was printed. This was actually printed onto glue stick, but that's PLA. So yeah, Magic Glue if you have larger parts, glue stick if you have smaller parts, it kind of sticks longer. Maybe not better, but for longer. Quid is asking, Quid is a new patron, was number 860, but it went down a little since he started. Where's my 847? Yeah, it goes up and down. That's just life, you know. I upload different things. I upload less, I upload more, and it keeps changing. Like Yup, would also like to see more from scratch builds instead of reviews. See reviews everywhere else. Again, I kind of talked a bit about that. How I want to have my voice in that discussion as well. Would like to see a Delta Dolly build and more info on how to calibrate a built Delta for modeling or SmoothieWare. Critical measurements, calibration for desired build plate diameter. So that's two things, I guess. That's first of all, how do you design a Delta? How do you get the arm length right? And I've built a Delta from scratch, but that was that before I started YouTubing? No. I talked about that one, the Service Reborn once. And I've just been using SmoothieWare and the auto calibration that does a really good job. That sort of stuff, yes. That's very specific. That's a very specific thing to do, but walking through a Delta build might be interesting. If it were a Dolly build, it would have to be a clone of something, but is there any Delta that I can actually clone? I'm not sure. Deltas aren't that complex, so there's also not much to design into them. There's not much you can deviate on, right? It's three identical towers in the hot, and that's it. You can have different linear rails, and yeah, not much to a Delta. But yeah, builds again, mostly printed CNC first. That can be a very interesting project because it's something different that I'm interested in, and it also works as a 3D printer, so two in one, I guess. And yeah, how to calibrate that sort of stuff would have to be with a Delta build, right? Currently have a modified formatting, modified A6 and the new 2018 Gold Tivo Tornado, which works fantastic compared to my old A6. Did I ever review or look at the Tornado? Those who have been following the channel for a while might be familiar with this, but no, I do not do TiVo after You know, I tried doing TiVo once. I kind of critiqued them for some weird stuff that was going on, and I got threatened. The channel got attacked, and somebody bought a few thousand dislikes on the most relevant videos at the time. So I'm just not gonna deal with that. I don't really like, you know, dealing with the mafia. So yeah, not interested in TiVo at the moment. So yeah, plan to eventually add TMC 2130 because I can. Good on you. Good choice. Cool. Hope that answers that. Printer builds, yes, would be fun, but they're a lot of work. And lastly, I'm going to refresh this page if I remember. Paziel. Hi Tom, what is your opinion on this kind of printer frame? Rat rig. That's actually where I bought my slider stuff from. Hypercube. The Hypercube seems to be a pretty popular design. So that is, let me see, Hypercube has a Ultimaker style bed where it has the rails in the back, right? I think to build this kind of printer to replace my old i2 Prusa. Hoping that's not a, yes, that's a printer, good. I mean, the i2 Prusa wasn't a bad machine, right? It printed pretty well. Only problems nowadays, quite a limited Z height, yeah. What do you think of that kind of printer compared to a normal Cartesian printer? So, I mean, technically the Hypercube is still a Cartesian machine, right? It's still X, Y, Z. It's just core X, Y. So I guess the X, Y are 45 degree rotated. So what are you thinking? Core X, Y or Ultimaker? Let me see. What am I thinking about Core XY with 2 long belts or Ultimaker style, 4 belts, 2 belts going 1 axis. Think drive that Bolden style due to Wi-Fi, yes. Great choice. C height with 12mm rods, linear bearings, threaded rod, 2mm pitch. Okay, basic input on that sort of design. I don't happen to have the Ultimakers next door, so I can't really show you what that's going to look like. But basically, you have your printer, you have your box, you have your 2 rails going up in the back with a lead screw in the center. Think of an Ultimaker or a BCN Sigma or anything that looks like that. That's your Z-axis. That's kind of given, right? The one thing I would love to do if I built a printer like that is use some sort of supported rail for that Z-axis. So if you look at the Ultimaker tool changer, if you look at where do you see that? In one of my E3D videos that I did while I was there, I showed off what their tool changer looks like right now, and it's linear rail. I can grab one of those, but it's basically a linear rail that is attached to an aluminum profile, so it is fully supported over the entire length. So one of these rails, that's an MGN9 that I have here. One of these, basically over the entire height, just a fatter one of these, over the entire height, and this is bolted down to an aluminum profile. So this thing is not going to wobble, because what's going to happen? Imagine this is about 8 millimeters. It's about as rigid as an 8mm rod, right? These are fixed on the ends, so this right here, this can bend very easily in that direction or that direction. Because it's still steel, right? It's still even 12 millimeters. It's still a massive part, but you add that leverage from the bed and the bed just starts shaking around if your tool head starts moving. So it's something that you've seen on the Dynamo 3D. Check my review of that. That's a real issue with those machines. So either use some really massive rails or round, what are they called? Linear rods? Yeah. Use larger rods or use something that is supported and screw those down to an aluminum profile. I think that is one of the biggest points of improvements with those style of machines. 2mm pitch, yeah, totally works for a lead screw. So yeah, upgrade this. 2mm pitch lead screw, sure, works. What do you think about Core XY or Ultimaker style? So if you compare those two, you can look at them. Well, actually, can I look this up real quick? Ultimaker gantry. There we go. Perfect. So basically, where can we see this? I guess that's showing it off pretty well. So basically you have your motors down here. These twist this rod right here, and then there's a coupling rod. So, well, it's stacked on top of each other, but these blocks basically slide on these rods, and then this cross rod transfers the force to the tool head. So the Ultimaker style setup like that is good if you have a really lightweight tool head, if you're not moving a lot of weight, because this is not the most rigid setup. Because if you look at it, you have this rod. Let me see where the force is going in this. No, right, but basically you have this one rod that is transferring all the forces. So if you think in the middle here, this is the only thing that is moving back and forth, so the y-axis. This one single rod needs to push the entire tool head around. So if you have a relatively heavy tool head, the Ultimaker style might not be the best choice, because a Core XY can just mechanically build more massively. Again, that's something that the E3D tool changer is doing by using just a carbon fiber crossbeam. It's pretty insane. So Core XY, for something that is heavier, maybe uses a non-Bowden extruder. I don't know if you'd call it a direct extruder. I wouldn't. But it's using a non-Bowden extruder. Core XY, if you're using a Bowden, Ultimaker can work as well. They're both pretty good. None of them is inherently superior to the other. It's just different styles, right? So, anything else about Ultimaker versus Core XY? I guess with the Ultimaker you have your so these rods that go back and forth. You can see there's a pulley attached to them. This is actually what's transferring the torque for the front and back belts, but it's also the linear rail for this rod, or for this, what's it called, block that is going the other direction. So it kind of limits any sort of inconsistencies. If your rod is bent, it's going to be spinning, so it's not going to matter as much, but that shouldn't be something to consider. Just a note on this side. Cool. Let me see, let me do a quick F5 here. Anyone still watching? I guess, maybe. I guess the last question for today from Kurt, another one. For Delta designs like my servers, can I recommend on better Traxxas style rods or magnetic with ball style rods? Is the question which one of those is better, or whether one is better than the other? So magnetic style ends like, well, I've seen them on the Atom 2.5, on the Delta Pro Monoprice. Magnetic joints just have zero slop. Like you have your ball, you have your socket, there's a magnet in there, it just snaps into the socket, and there's, it's magnetically pre-tensioned, so there's very little to zero slop in there. That is very nice. It does have that pre-tensioning force, so it's not perfectly smooth, but typically you have some lube in there, and it's pretty good. The downside to that is if your printer makes some weird moves, these are gonna come loose. Those are gonna unsnap pretty easily. Like if you have something sticking up from a print and the tool head just moves over it weirdly, it just comes off and your tool head's laying in the bed and kind of, fish out of water. So that's one of the disadvantages to that. The other thing with the Traxxas, like the really cheap injection molded and brass head kind of sockets, is they have a lot of slop, and they will develop more slop over time. So you typically see that spring between them. So I don't know, I guess I can show you real quick before the battery runs out on this camera. So while we're at it, there we go. So that's the Cerberus Reborn, the one that I built from scratch. There we go. And I'm using neither the Traxxas nor the magnetic joints. You could use eyeglass joints, but supposedly those have a bit of play. I'm using rod ends or eyes that are purchased from China. I don't know the exact name of those right now. Not too happy with them because they're kind of, they do have a bit of slop, and I mean, they're metal to metal, so you can't really pre-tension them all that well, but you could take a spring and just kind of clamp these together so you get some relief from, well, any sort of slack you have in there. Oh, you can actually see that. That's the screw not being screwed in. But yeah, these are not that great, but it's the same style as a Traxxas or an Eigus bushing. Let's move you guys back. So what is better, magnetic or Traxxas? I would actually go with, if you had the choice, I would go with magnetic because they are just nicer. They have no slop, and they're not going to develop slop because they're pre-tension. It's a pretty elegant solution. Actually, one more thing that I kind of want to point out: if you don't want to do magnetic because it's hard to do perfectly, you can also do kind of a spring solution where you have your two arms, you have a socket and a ball, same thing, but you don't have a magnet in there, but you have a spring between those two arms, just a spring in the center that tensions your carriage against the effector. So that can work like a magnetic joint. It might, don't use rubber bands, those were out, but if you use a long spring, that can work pretty much as well, and you can really adjust the tension you get on your sockets. Might be worth looking into. So, magnetic interferes with the BL Touch. Possibly. Heim joints. Oh yeah, Heim joints. That's pretty much what I have on the service buoyant or rod end bearing. Yes. Right. So you could pull that up again. You could just use a spring between the two arms and pre-tension it like that, if you want to do something like that. Sweet. I guess that's all the questions for today. Again, thank you all for your support. Thank you all for joining in. Thank you all for asking great questions. And what was I going to say with this? Yeah, I'm going to post on Patreon a quick thread because some of you were asking about guides about, what stuff other than reviews and projects like this. This is to keep me sane most of all. What sort of guides and what specifically would you guys like to hear or see or watch about? Some people have commented, hey, if you do one more video about Marlin, like, I'm gonna unsubscribe. Not sure if that is the majority of you guys, but yeah, I'm gonna post it on Patreon so everyone can comment on it, and I kind of have a recording of what you guys want. But yeah, thanks for joining in, thanks for asking questions, and I will see you all soon. Bye. Can I click already? I never know when to click.